Gagan and you're listening to the Voice of Insurance podcast, produced in association with Advantage Go, now part of Sapiens, enabling an enterprise view of exposure. Today's episode is one of those interviews that give you a warm feeling of anticipation when you get it in the diary. Then, when you're researching and preparing the questions, you're really looking forward to it. And finally, the recording itself happens, and it goes even better than you hoped. Now, a couple of weeks later, I've just listened back, and I'm still smiling, because this is something quite special and very different from the everyday. Richard Brindle and Clive Washbourn are two of the most celebrated underwriters of their generation, and have each been on the podcast more than once in their own right. For the last 5 years, Richard and Clive have been underwriting under the same group organisational roof, in the Fidelis Partnership and Navium respectively. Richard even cited Clive's newfound joie de vivre at Navium as the inspiration for the bifurcation of Fidelis into the Fidelis Partnership and Pelagos. This podcast is only briefly about the grand issues of the day. My interviews very quickly deal with these, and then we start examining much more timeless and valuable questions. The core of this meeting is really a long discussion about what makes a good underwriter, and then what makes a good underwriter a great one. We examine all of this in the context of the AI revolution and how to apply it to the business of outperforming in insurance underwriting. This is a masterclass that will teach you an awful lot. Along the way, you'll also spend quality time with two of the market's strongest and most charismatic personalities. The result is an instant classic that provides a valuable lesson for any insurance professional at any stage in their career. Enjoy the podcast.
Richard and Clive, welcome back, both of you, to the Voice of Insurance.
Thank you.
Good morning.
I've had you both on the podcast, but never in the same room. And yes, this is quite an occasion.
Yes. And of course, the big surprise is I've been working alongside Richard now for 5 years, and we still have not had the Krakatoa Easter Java event, which everyone was predicting. The big volcanic blow up between us.
These two men can't be in the same room without some sort of fight breaking out.
But it's been an amazing 5 years.
Well, it has been. Obviously, the last annual results, you've gone over 5 billion of gross written premium. In this market, can you continue that sort of rate of growth? Obviously, by all accounts, the market is deteriorating to some degree. How do you feel about it?
So a couple of big points there, Mark. First of all, no disrespect, the press focuses relentlessly on North American property business. And it's true there are certainly headwinds in that area, probably some of the most severe headwinds. Although even within that area, we find ways to mitigate the level of rate reductions through the way that we operate, and we can talk about that more if you're interested. So our portfolio now comprises 150 lines of business in 140 countries. We're truly global. Post-COVID, what we've seen is our industry retreat, particularly the London market, retreating into its shell. People don't travel anymore. They don't go and see our clients. They don't go and try and find new opportunities. And Clive and I have done that all our careers, and we still do it.
Yeah.
And people have stopped doing that. So we go to country after country after country where people say to us some variation of, we haven't seen an underwriter from London since COVID. There is a big world out there. Our industry has traditionally traded very effectively in North America, Western Europe, Australasia, and Japan. And we've been absolute crap everywhere else. Clive and I and all my colleagues are not of that mindset. We embrace the multipolar world. We embrace the fact there is a big, big, big world out there. There is much lower insurance penetration outside of the 4 areas I've just mentioned. So we've done an exercise
I suppose it's slightly less competitive ultimately as well.
It can be, yeah, but there's certainly enormous potential for growth.
Yeah.
So Charlie Mathias, my deputy chairman, is in charge of what we're calling our High Growth Markets Initiative, and he's in Lagos now for the Africa Re-Summit. I don't know why you laugh. Nobody else from London has gone.
No.
It's extraordinary. There's a conference coming up in Jordan for all the MENA region in a couple of weeks' time. Nobody else from London is going.
Yeah.
It's grossly disrespectful. And it's bloody stupid, and long may it continue. So the short answer is there's a massive world out there. If everybody stops obsessing about competing for the same piece of North American property business and actually realize that there is a huge platform for growth in all these other areas of the world, then they'd have much better businesses.
Yeah.
But don't hold your breath, because this industry is characterized by a very neo-imperial mentality, isn't it, Clive, in London?
Absolutely.
I hear this phrase all the time, it's going to come to London. Well, guess what? It isn't.
Yeah, it doesn't.
China is going to launch more insured satellites next year than America. Think about that for a minute.
No, I was just reading about it. There's a Chinese company that's sort of going to take on Starlink and it's going to put up 20,000 satellites or something. And of course, it will do.
Yeah. So what have we done? We've got on planes to Beijing, to Hong Kong. We've met the local brokers. We've met the local cedents, and we're doing business there.
And that's certainly come into focus, hasn't it, Richard, with the Middle East war? A lot of the clients are saying they haven't seen anyone. yet Fidelis have been travelling there. We've had a broker over this week saying he'd been into a particular Abu Dhabi client 5 times and he wants to bring the business to us. The client already says he's not sure about his existing partners because he feels let down. That sort of engagement is really important. And let's be honest, I always like actually seeing who I'm insuring.
Yeah.
And they want to see who their counterparty is and whether that counterparty is good for its word.
And how's that conflict been? How has it affected the markets? Some of these are markets that you're in every day, all day, every day.
Well, I'll let Clive talk about marine. On the PV side, we have been completely vindicated by our refusal to write broker facilities. As was the case in Russia-Ukraine, the vast majority of the losses have fallen on broker facilities. And the most obvious example is Sabic, which we all know about.
Yeah.
An $800 million claim, I think.
Yeah.
And there's another insured, Sator, which had interest in the same location, which could take the loss up to $1.5 billion.
And that's probably cleaned out the PV income, hasn't it, Richard?
Oh, yeah. We think that annual income was probably about $1.5 billion net of brokerage. And obviously there've been multiple other losses as well. But almost all this business, Mark, was placed under broker facilities with little to no visibility over pricing. Yeah. They have these dreadful facilities where literally there's 3 leaders and the cheapest one gets the order.
Yes.
I'm thinking about that for a minute. It's grotesque. And the tired excuse from underwriters is, oh, well, we're not going to see the business otherwise. Well, guess what? That's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
Because if you don't have the discipline not to write the facilities, of course you're not going to see the business open market. Guess what, dummy? Because it's going to go under the aforementioned facilities.
Well, someone has to be the first person to decide that this market needs to be harder.
I urge my colleagues in the London market to stop writing these facilities. If they have the gumption to do so, we will automatically see pricing correct. Of course we will. Because then the business is in the open market, it's scrutinised accordingly, and it's priced accordingly.
Of course, for some people, they're just rather lazy, aren't they, Richard? It's too easy just to write 1 line a year and close your eyes.
The conflict started, as you remember, on a Friday afternoon. We were all in the office all weekend, marine, aviation, PV teams, looking at our exposures, looking at opportunities. And I always say about us, Mark, we probably share some characteristics with Berkshire in that respect. You'll always get an answer from us. You'll always get a price from us. You might not like the price, but there's always somebody who's going to answer your phone call and your email or your WhatsApp and give you a price.
Yeah.
And brokers, if you did a word cloud for Navium, TFP, it would be things like tough, don't always like their pricing, can be aggressive, but you would also hear adjectives like available, hardworking, hard driving, responsive. And I'm proud of that. That's who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that Saturday, it might be a surprising comment, but we knew exactly what we had in there on the ground and on the sea. And I've heard of other organisations within Lloyd's that they've actually stopped writing marine because they couldn't give the number to the management, which is quite extraordinary because isn't those the 3 things, knowing what you're insuring, how much you're insuring and how long you're on for? There's sort of some basic tenets.
Yes. How do you when you put that line down, how do you explain what you're doing?
But we have fantastic coordination with TFP. Straight away, we decided what was going to be our appetite, what we were going to look at within the Gulf, ships and rigs, and what the rating was. And Richard's made himself available at least twice a week for us to chat to about the coordination of the rating, because it's the same capital. So we absolutely have to have coordination and agreement of what we're going to expose the capital to and what price. And we were quite cautious about the Strait of Hormuz. And at the moment, the ships are coming out. We're sending our prices.
I think the disappointing thing for me on the marine side was the market didn't look at geopolitics. So a lot of markets would have the same price for an Emirati tanker as they would for a Pakistani tanker. Now, obviously, Pakistan were mediating the talks. We were very happy to insure their vessels, and of course, there were no claims. Of course, there weren't. Think about it. Think about who the owner is, who the charter is. Think about port of origin. Think about the port of destination. It's so obvious, it shouldn't need saying. And yet, in this wonderful market of ours, a lot of these markets, including some of the MGAs,
just going to rate
one price fits all. Strait of Hormuz, there's your price. Which is, even my kids said to me, surely you have to look at the underlying risk before you price this. Yes,
absolutely.
It's a geopolitical risk.
But then welcome to our world.
And certainly, the insurers were characterised as not providing a product. That was wrong. There was a product. It was at a price that some found difficult to pay and didn't pay. And so we were there all the way through this. We have provided pricing.
Again, some of those losses, and when you see the first reports come in, you think, wow, and we were going to end up with a load of litigation again. In terms of people, saying, is this political violence? I don't know. Does an Iranian missile coming across the Gulf and hitting an innocent third party effectively being used as sort of collateral. How does that fit in? Is that a war risk or is that a political violence risk? And it looks like the sort of thing that I imagine lawyers are going to argue about. I don't know. What do you think?
I think certainly the blocking and trapping side is probably not going to be an issue now.
Yeah.
Vessels are largely getting out. I think there are some wordings in the marine market which were devised for the Cold War, which are now 50 years out of date.
Absolutely.
I mean, and they have to be overhauled. Otherwise, we risk looking ridiculous to our clients.
Yeah.
Certainly the Iran conflict has been, well, that was a negative surprise of waking up and hearing the radio and thinking, wow, I wasn't expecting that necessarily. The re-reserving of the Baltimore Bridge loss, was that a surprise to anybody? I mean, when I saw it on the news, I thought, well, that looks like a total loss.
I'll let Richard answer that because we don't actually, as Navium, participate on the reinsurance, but we insure almost all the clubs on the non-poolable bit. But I'll let Richard answer that.
Yeah, I think it was a surprise. Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty much, was it doubling or was it just a lot more than everyone thought it was going to be?
It pretty much doubled, didn't it? I think 1.5 to 2.8 or something.
Yes.
It's basically the whole IG reinsurance program gone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, so does that make it bigger than Costa Concordia?
Yeah, I think we worked out Costa was sort of about 2.5 in today's money.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think 1.6, 1.7 at
So
the time.
again, when you have a negative surprise, usually you have a reaction. What's your reaction?
It will harden some pockets. It's not going to lead to a broad-based correction in marine pricing. But again, Mark, I need to get across to you, probably 10 years ago, we'd have been a lot more focused on that loss, on perhaps a Florida hurricane, perhaps what you might call traditional London market losses. And of course, we participate in that business and we're pleased to do so. But we're a very different sort of organisation now.
I suppose you're so much more diversified now. You're writing hundreds of lines of business that are not correlated.
So much more diversified. And I'm not saying that we like losses. Of course we don't. And we work hard on behalf of our capital partners to do the best we can. I think the results we're producing have been excellent for them. But we've got a lot of other fish to fry. And we're not particularly big in Florida. We're not particularly big in California, Quake. Yeah. It's a very diversified business now. And we've been trying to get across to a lot of constituents who we speak to. Our Sharpe ratio now is very high. The range of outcomes that we are demonstrating on behalf of our capital partners is pretty narrow. Even with the planes in Russia, our colleagues at Pelagos, they did a great job of managing the claims, and I don't think they went over 100% combined in the 3 loss-affected years from those events. That's extraordinary. That was a black swan on a black swan.
Yes.
And they didn't even break into triple figures combined. So that, I think, gives you some idea of just how diversified this business is now and how resilient we are.
Yeah.
Since we last spoke, when I look at the sort of press releases coming out of your organisation, most likely be there's a consortium for this, a consortium for that. Really, really interesting. There was one with your leading Clive of the IT equipment or, the equipment.
Yes,
sort of.
Well, obviously, the big new insurance is data centres, isn't it? And we're looking after the transit of the...
Yeah, and how's that going with the data centres? Obviously, I've been very exciting, thinking this is a really interesting prospect. And I think it was Aon brought forward with a very big number, sort of 8 billion of new premium. And you think that's one of those things that really opens your eyes and think this is really, really interesting. Is that business actually coming through now? Because they're putting spades in the ground, aren't they?
We quickly realised that this was going to be a game for big players. You had to be meaningful. You got clients of people like Alphabet and Meta, and they're not interested in, with due respect, a small London market company or syndicate running a $5 billion.
It's just a sticking plaster for them, isn't it? Otherwise, they would do it themselves.
So we quickly put together, our friends at the insurance group were incredibly responsive. We said to them, I should pay tribute to the partnership. There is no other carrier MGA partnership like it. If you think about it, we said to them on a given day, let's say it was a Wednesday, look, we're going to need a big line for this stuff. This is a big opportunity. I think by the next day, they'd agreed to more than double their line for data centres. So we then use that as the lead line, and then we put together a Lloyd's consortium, and our capacity now is about $300 million for DCs, which puts us at the top table with Zurich and Chubb and the other guys who are leading this stuff. So we have 10 consortia now, and we're very responsive to our partners. We offer them a high level of visibility over what we're underwriting. They're always welcome to come in and meet us and see us in action. And I think it's a very good business model, actually, because they're saving a lot of costs in not having to put together a DC team, which is expensive and it's hard to find good people. And they can hopefully have trust and conviction in our underwriting track record and are happy to back us. And what we're finding is because we've got that bigger line, we can attract verticalized terms. We can drive higher terms, writing our slug of the risk than the primary or some of the other excess layers. So we're all winning. The consortium members don't have to carry the G&A cost of employing a team themselves. They get the benefit of our alpha on the pricing. We're all winning. And the clients get a big slug of capacity, which otherwise would be very hard for them and the brokers to put together. So it's just intelligent all around.
And with that, you can afford to find the absolute best people who know the best underwriters in that class, I suppose.
Yeah.
But just the response time on this is one of the things we've absolutely loved at Navium working with Richard, is if people have an idea and it's well thought out, the execution speed is fabulous. You go to a lot of our competitors and you feel they probably do have some good ideas, but the execution's poor. The execution here is absolutely superb. Why is it important? Because in every class of business, there are times when you have an opportunity post-loss to be really aggressive. I think war's probably a fine example. And here you're allowed to take the capacity, get the agreement of TFP, and off we go. Yeah. And that is why we should always outperform our competitors, because the speed of execution is superb.
So we'll expect to see more consortia. It seems like a model that's really working, particularly, and now with the technology and everything, so all those partners can see exactly what you're doing almost in real time anyway.
For sure.
You're well positioned. And in fact, what you were saying about that speed and what those brokers, they know that they can pick up the phone and you will get an answer. And if they have a new idea, something untried, a new innovative class of business, or just they've had an interesting idea on the way in to work that morning, they know they can pick up the phone and have a word with you about it because you get an answer. So what sort of things, there's so many interesting, innovative classes of business. What sort of ideas that are floating around in the world today that you're most interested to get involved with? We know when they get those calls from the broker saying, hey, Richard, I've got this idea. There are lots of new classes sort of floating around. Of those good ideas, which ones are the ones that you're most taking your fancy most?
When you look across TFP and Pine Walk, we've got an extraordinary amount of talent and a lot of experience, by the way.
Yeah.
If ever there was in the past a perception this was a bit of a one-man band, that's long gone.
Yeah.
I mean, look at this guy. Look at all the very seasoned people we have under our roof now. So we have a tremendous talent pool. We're very innovative. I was meeting with Marsh yesterday, really quite a detailed meeting with their new UK chief executive, talking to her about AI, all its implications, the type of new products and I don't want to, if you don't mind, specify exactly what they are because it's...
What do you think about AI as a standalone peril? Do you think it's going to be the sort of thing, a bit like cyber, it might end up being excluded? At the moment, it's silently included in everything, in every liability policy. It's got silent AI. I mean, it's not excluded, so it's silently included. But probably that's going to be inadequate at some point. We're going to get a big claim, and then it's going to be disputed, and then the client will realise that they should have had affirmative coverage.
I would imagine it will emerge as a class of its own in time.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we are, I think, well known, aren't we, Clive, over decades for being the people you go to when a new thing happens or a new trend emerges and insurance products need to evolve.
Yeah.
Yes, it's something that these are ideas you're entertaining and thinking this should be a high growth new business opportunity.
What interests us as a group, apropos AI, is seeing if we can mechanize things, automate things, and therefore control our expense ratios. The quicker we can get to automation, the quicker it allows the people to underwrite and not do the processing of the policy.
I was having a chat with someone who's a technologist on a podcast recently, and I did this thing which I think shows two different underwriting philosophies. I said, well, yeah, okay, so you sort of codifying the mind of the senior underwriter and industrializing his output, i.e. making someone like Richard and you incredibly more productive. But he came back and said, no, I don't like you saying that because that assumes that the old guy knows everything. In fact, what you really need to build for is the 24-year-old who's just come into your organization, who knows how to use AI much better than Richard does, and he's going to come up with a whole new class of business. And then obviously Richard will go and kick the tires on those ideas, that there might be a ground-up swell as well that will be ready for it.
No, I pretty flatly disagree with that. The value of experience and relationships and expertise are...
Well, he was a technologist, he's not an underwriter. So
well, then he would say that, wouldn't he? Because he doesn't understand our industry. What you need is the marriage of very, very slick technology. For example, I spoke, and probably Clive's done similar things, literally spoke to the master of a Chinese tanker in the Gulf on a satellite phone about his insurance requirements. Yes. You tell me how a 24-year-old could do that, or for that matter, how AI can do that. Yes. And we're not Luddites in any way, quite the reverse, Mark. I think there's a very good article I read in The Economist a few weeks ago about AI and how there's various ways companies are effing it up. Some are because they're Luddites and are just sort of closing their eyes and wishing it would all go away. Some because, to your friend's point, they just think they suddenly know it all. They're trashing their entire business model to sacrifice it on the altar of AI. That's also a terrible mistake. And then the smart ones are the ones who are saying, how can it enable us to do what we do better, do more of the good stuff that we do, free up the real value creators within our company to do more value creation, get away from and eradicate mindlessly repetitive tasks, which we all grew up doing.
Yes.
And I remember when I joined Lloyd's back in the 80s, and I was an Oxford graduate. I'd been studying Plato and Aristotle.
And then you were photocopying slips, yeah.
I'm filling in LPSO cards.
Yes.
and mindlessly repetitive clerical work, but you did it because you knew that was a necessary condition to career advancement.
Yes, yeah.
That's all gone now.
Yeah.
So what JP O'Hare and I, he's head of our underwriting portfolio, is a brilliant guy. What we've done is we've gone to each of our offices and we sat down with what we call disruptors, and they are mainly younger people, but not all. And we said, right, you've been selected for this lunch because we think you have a disruptor mindset. We want from you examples of what we do at the moment, which is ridiculous. And we want to know how we get rid of that. And we also want your ideas about new stuff we can do, harnessing AI. And it's proved an extraordinarily fertile conversation. We have let some people go, Mark. And I think for all decent CEOs, I'm not a bad guy, I'm a very nice guy, but you have to make some choices. And the reality is, if you're running a business and using AI a lot, you don't need as many people.
Yeah.
But what it does mean is that the jobs that survive are much more interesting.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I'm jealous. I wish for today's 24-year-olds that I had a job like theirs, because when I was 24, I was doing a load of absolute boring crap in order to get ahead.
Yeah.
That's gone.
Yeah.
Data entry, rekeying, all the human error that goes with it, the bad outcomes that creates throughout the business, that's gone. And so, this is exciting, but it has consequences.
It's a tool. And thank goodness it's merely a tool to actually allow you to frame a really good decision. What do I mean by that? As Richard, it's about relationships. It's about creating the relationships with the brokers and then actually meeting the clients and deciding whether you like someone or not. Now, the machine can never do that. Often I go into a meeting, will come out, and the owner's giving me the heebie-jeebies. And I can't tell you why.
I know what you mean.
We all have a sense of danger and fear innately from being cavemen and fire and saber-toothed tigers. But it's a fantastic tool. A rater is a very useful thing to start with. But I'd like people to think, certainly on Navium, to underwrite with their brain, not just to have someone say, that's the number. It's a starting place. I want them then to engage. Is this a good risk? It's not about whether the machine has said that it's $3 a ton. That's not good enough. Think it through. What are you insuring? And I love it if you ask someone or a youngster, why have you done that? If they say, I don't know, that's fatal. If they say, here's what I thought about, and here's the logic, I might not agree with it, but there's been a sequential thought process. The I don't know is the wrong answer.
I mean, because, yes, there are ship owners and no ship owners. It's rare to have two famous underwriters. I had both of you on the podcast individually, but so at the beginning, I'd have you both in the same room. How's it been? You've been together for 5 years, working in the same organisation. Do you ever have any sort of disagreements? Do you ever look at what the other's done and thought, God, I wouldn't do it that way? Or have you learned things off each other?
Richard, you can answer this one.
I think we write a slightly different type of account.
Yeah.
Clive's is more geared towards smaller ship owners who he knows personally and different regional brokers around the world who he knows personally. Ours tends to be the bigger, more marquee type fleets, but there's plenty of overlap.
Yeah.
But above all, Mark, there's masses of communication. And again, there's no substitute for that. I don't actually see how AI could do that either.
No,
we are on the phone to each other 10, 12, 15 times a day, every day, including weekends if necessary. And I don't think we've had a single crossword in 5 years.
No, we haven't.
And we're not exactly shrinking violets either.
No,
so
we're not.
that's pretty
In
remarkable.
terms of how's it been for me, honestly, working with someone who's highly intelligent is absolutely, to me, the be-all and end-all, because if you explain things, Richard gets it. And the speed of execution as well. We'll discuss something and it's either yes or no, and then we get on with it. So, and Richard has seen so many different classes of business. I've come into the Tuesday meeting, which is the marketing meeting. You can learn so much. Most of the people that work in TFP within 15 years could be CEOs of other insurance companies because the information they gain here is so comprehensive and diverse. It's a great, great learning home, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, just ask straight out, what's your definition of what is the art of successful underwriting? How do you do it? If you had to distill that, I've got the AI tool here, and the AI is asking you, Clive, how do I replicate Clive and industrialise Clive Washbourn?
Well, I think I'm probably repeating myself from early on in the conversation. I think it's understanding what you're insuring is quite fundamental.
And those people.
What's the business you're in, the limits you're taking, the rates you're charging. It's really being really comfortable with the risk you're taking on, I think is important. And most important, being brave at the right points of the market. When most people are running away, you want to be running towards the fire.
And it's hard.
And it is hard and it's scary, and you don't want to fail. You don't want anyone saying, well, why was he doing that? But this company is really good at identifying a post-claim scenario in a given market and thinking, I think we can make some money here. We can price it, come to an agreement on pricing. But being brave is still very important. I don't mean foolish, but being brave.
Certainly not reckless, but just, yeah.
I mean, certainly when I was a broker, there was that moment, you're the broker who's given the underwriter a loss, and you walk around with this black cloud over you, and people almost superstitiously won't touch you or even talk to you. And it seemed to be completely ridiculous in a business that is all about contingency. We don't know which of the buildings are going to burn down, but we know one of them is going to burn down this year, probably, in all probability. And it's not anyone's fault. It's just a series of unfortunate events. Is again sort of being forgiving of a loss. Is that another art of the underwriting to say, well, of course it's not your fault that there was a loss, because it's just that's what they paid the premium for, because if there was no risk, there wouldn't be any insurance.
I've always thought it's absurd to blame brokers for losses.
Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm very glad to hear that, Richard. But it's very hard when you've given the market a very big
You're writing a portfolio. We are in the claims business, and accidents happen.
Stuff happens.
And then that's part of the being brave, because then you don't have to go and blame yourself that you wrote this risk and you got a loss. Then you don't have to beat yourself up. And then it's easier to dust yourself down and get out and start quoting terms tomorrow morning.
I think another important thing actually is the respect to the brokers. I think you have to look at your relationship in a holistic way. You're looking at the relationship, you look at the income they're bringing, the profitability. And if they think it's all about you, they won't come with their best. So it's a sort of balancing act.
That ability to decline business in the right sort of way so that they can still come back tomorrow. They don't feel like... I mean, there was that culture in Lloyd's that, certainly when you were all younger, that idea of, it was slightly terrifying going in, especially as a young broker. You're just offering someone a piece of business and then they practically throw it on the floor. And you think, well, why do you have to do that? I mean, all I did was I offered you honestly a deal.
Let me just respond to that. I think, first of all, I always say to my underwriters, you never say no. You can say no, but... we don't want to do this, but how about that?
Yeah.
Secondly, even though we're both strong characters, those histrionics of the past were nothing short of disgraceful.
Yeah.
And Clive and I grew up in a market where you'd see a lot of these underwriters. They were often misogynistic. They were often racist.
They were sort of public school bully types.
They had massive egos.
Yeah.
They would barely turn up at the box.
Yeah.
When they did, they were often half cut. They were a disgrace. And those sort of histrionics of throwing brokers' slips to the floor are pathetic. And if anybody did that here, they get fired the next day. We are a service business. We are here to service our clients and brokers. We would never tolerate behaviour like that. And nor should anybody
else. It's just
else.
bad for business, isn't it?
Because business.
When I've got a really good risk, I don't need to see that underwriter because everyone else is all over it. Well, I don't show it to them, do I? I mean, absolutely. When sometimes the boot's on my foot, isn't it? And so those people don't know what they haven't been shown because they're so unpleasant.
It really was like that.
It really
wasn't it, Richard? It really was. Horrendous.
You're both known, and the businesses that you've always worked at are known for short tail speciality. Now that the world, and now we've got all this data processing power and other things, do you think you could get more comfortable with long tail over time?
But again, Mark, we have evolved a lot. We are now in the...
But also the thing is, we say short tail, it's only relatively short. These days, once you get to sort of litigating things up to the Supreme Court, it becomes long tail anyway, doesn't it?
Long tenor, slightly different, but yeah. No, we write casualty now. We write A&H. We write a lot of things that you may not traditionally have associated me with. Again, we're a risk allocator.
Yeah.
Our different capital providers have different appetites. In some cases, as with our Blackstone syndicates, they have a much longer investment horizon, and it makes sense to match the asset duration to the liability duration. So they naturally have more of an appetite for casualty business. It's very different with respect from my past companies, which were, I'm not going to say old-fashioned because we were always cutting edge, but wrote a pretty traditional short to medium-tail book of kind of London market business. We're very different now.
Yeah.
And actually talking about the Blackstone syndicate, it almost looks like if someone's saying, what's the future of Lloyd's? I'd say, well, look at that. That's something that's very futuristic.
Yeah.
What do you think Lloyd's will look like in 20, 30 years' time? Do you think we'll have a lot more of those? I mean, I almost feel that there could be a Blackstone or, even a BlackRock fund that would be sitting behind London Bridge 2, and I could put it in my pension. And it would say it would be Lloyd's fund number one, and it would end up having to be 30, 40 billion or something.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the alternative asset managers, whether it's BlackRock, KKR, Blue Owl, obviously Blackstone, all people we do business with, obviously our relationship with Blackstone is particularly strong. But yeah, I think all of those guys are looking hard at Lloyd's, but I would also just want to shout out for the names. So our biggest Lloyd's syndicate, 3123, is almost entirely capitalised by what you might call old-fashioned Lloyd's names. And they've been a fantastic source of capital.
Yeah.
And they're not going away.
No.
I think Hamden's have something like 4 billion under management. And John Francis and the team there have been superb supporters. They understand our business really well.
Yeah.
They're very sticky. They're very long-term. And frankly, they don't consume a lot of our management time because they just understand. They want us to get on with it. What they do love, and I've had this anecdotally back from the members' agents, is they love it. When nobody wants to glorify warfare, but when you have a situation like the Middle East and guys like us step to the fore and take the market by the scruff of the neck and lead it and make good profits for them, they love that. Yeah. So they love that entrepreneurship, which is so lacking in so much of life.
Absolutely. And let's just shout out for the London market, the insurance market. This is still the predominant insurance, specialty insurance provider in the world.
Yep.
And long may it continue. It is one of the strengths of the London.
Well, it certainly feels like London is a healthier place than it has been any time in my career. When I arrived in 1992, I just didn't feel it was on its best form, or that its best days were necessarily ahead of it. It didn't feel that good at that time.
I think Lloyd's was in decline for decades, and I pay tribute to Patrick and Rachel and the team. I think it's the best team we've seen running Lloyd's for a very, very long time. I would just, however, add that we are in constant dialogue with Lloyd's, appropriate dialogue, I hasten to add. There is some behaviour at the moment which I think is highly irresponsible, and Lloyd's need to be very, very careful that they don't allow this behaviour to continue much longer, because if it does, you're back to decile 10. As sure as eggs is eggs. Yeah. There's no other outcome.
So just lack of discipline and pricing.
In some lines, yeah. And again, it's not universal. And again, I go back to our diversified portfolio. Yeah. Lots of stuff we do is fine. I mean, actually, marine's pretty okay, I would say that. And aviation is fine. Our bespoke lines are all in positive territory. We've got a lot of our global business is in positive territory. But yeah, I mean, particularly in the North American property, you're seeing people completely lose their discipline and lose their heads. And Lloyd's has an important role to play there to ensure that they don't end back in the depths of 2017.
Yeah.
Well, that's the challenge. But certainly when I go to the quarterly market messages, the message has been pretty clear, to be honest, hasn't it? So
yeah, but it's about action.
You have to actually do something about it. Yeah. You can talk and you do eventually have to punish the bad actors, don't you?
Absolutely.
You've both kind of achieved everything you'd ever want to achieve. What drives you these days? I mean, when you were younger, it's easy. I want a fast car and a big house and a racehorse. And these days, kind of you've done all of that. What really drives you now?
Well, I drive a Toyota Prius, so I'm not really I'm not that kind of guy. For me, it's very enjoyable. I mean, this business model is exhilarating as a risk allocator. It's just so different. It's so innovative. It's so much fun. But, I've got an eye on my legacy. Of course I have. And philanthropy is extremely important to me. And I want to take that to great, enormous scale. It's pretty big already. I want to make it as big as possible and hopefully make a bit of a difference. Yeah. But it's both. I love the job too.
Yeah. Same with me. I'm really still motivated by it. I'm absolutely terrified by dementia. So that keeping my brain active is really important to me. Retirement, I generally don't even think about it. I don't know what the hell it means. Where would I like to go? I would still like the business to get really big and then I can afford a couple of ships. I would like to learn how to run a couple of bulk carriers.
So you'd actually be a master mariner?
No, own them.
You would just be the owner? Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything you'd like to talk about that we haven't talked about that wasn't on my list of prompts before we sign off?
I don't think so. I think it was a good interview. I think I wanted to get into philanthropy. We've done that. I wanted to get in market discipline. We've done that. I think I've made all the key points about our business. Fine by me.
Well, on the philanthropy, is it Fidelis Foundation?
There's two.
And what do they get involved in most?
Well, all kinds of things around the world.
So it's not specifically, I'm trying to cure cancer, or what are the main sort of
All I would
allocations?
say, I've run my own charity in Nepal for 25 years now. We just had our quarter century, which I'm very proud of. That's an increasingly big organisation where we help a hell of a lot of people. And we've started out with the basics because it's a very poor part of the country. People think of Nepal, they think of Kathmandu, the Everest, all that stuff. This is the south, which is very, very hot, flat, monsoon prone, very, very poor. And I first went there because a friend of mine who's a Buddhist took me to Lumbini, which is the birthplace of Buddha. But just down the road from that, you've got some of the greatest poverty in South Asia. And the juxtaposition of the temples and all the wealth and all the wealthy Buddhist tourists come in, nothing against them, good luck to them. But then the grinding poverty just struck me as wrong. So got involved there 26 years ago now.
Wow.
And we started out with the basics. People were sharing water wells with cattle and they were getting all sorts of terrible amoebic diseases and so forth. It was a lot of maternal mortality, a lot of infant mortality, So we kind of fixed that by drilling artesian wells on the rock, and then we got into capacity building, monsoon drains, community halls, and mobile clinics, fixed clinics, and all the health indicators have improved dramatically. We work with the government, but the government's stretched. It's a poor country. And now with the really thing I really love now, because it kind of brings my business brain into play, is the microcredit, where we lend mainly to women. You tend to be slightly more responsible borrowers than men.
I actually had a podcast recently with Charlie Langdale and the Humanity Insured.
Yeah.
Fascinating what
he's done some
up
great
to.
stuff.
Yeah.
We work with Charlie. And the repayment rate's over 99%. So the beauty is, you lend $1, you get back 99.5 cents, and you lend it again, and you only have to top up the capital periodically. And you're liberating an entire generation of people. People might use the money to buy a goat, and then use the goat for milk and cheese, or they might buy a sewing machine to make some clothes, or then scale up to opening a little shop. But it's wonderful. When I was there in February, it's so great to go there and see these people just liberated from the drudgery of just a survival existence to actually becoming entrepreneurs. I love it.
Yeah.
And it's just small amounts of money, isn't it? Can transform people's
$50
lives.
here, $50 there makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
And if you're helping with the flood resilience, that kind of thing as well, you know that when they do open the shop, it's not going to get washed away in the next monsoon.
Precisely.
That's really good because you build it up and you can see it incrementally sort of snowballing.
Yeah.
It is an eye-opener when you travel. When you go to places like Dhaka, and I'm going to see the rich who run the ships, and you look at the poverty, you think, goodness me, we live in a really different world here.
Well, and you see the crews stranded and then they're starving, I
find this mind-boggling.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, I'm really glad we had the extra couple of minutes on. That was really interesting. You really came alive when you said that.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much, both of you. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review or recommendation on whatever podcast platform you used to access this programme. These really help get the word out. Before we go, just a quick reminder that advertising slots are available here and in other places in the Voice of Insurance podcasts. Podcasting is the fastest growing medium and attracts a high quality audience of key decision makers. It's also an intimate medium where you, the listener, are right in the room with me and the interview subjects. Needless to say, that means it's a great way of getting your message out directly to an audience because you know you've got their full attention. It's also very cost effective. So get in touch with Mark at thevoiceofinsurance.com to find out how you could be speaking directly to the industry. The Voice of Insurance podcast is produced in association with Advantage Go, enabling enterprise scale underwriting through a single pane of glass. Voice of Insurance is produced by me, Mark Gagan. Music was written by Anna Gagan and produced by Carlos Gagan. Check out more podcasts and written comment pieces at www.thevoiceofinsurance.com.